Snow in Florida. Have you seen all of the snow in Florida? It's pretty wild stuff down there. And so it's cold, and it's cold everywhere. It's cold up here. Apparently there's a foot of snow in Louisiana. In Ontario, it's like minus 18 overnight last night. So it was pretty cold. So that's very interesting as well. And Jasper, there's a fire update. Can't rebuild unless the feds and Parks Canada and the municipalities uphold their part of the bargain. And the main chunk of the beginning of today's show is Trump and tariffs, because these are the biggest issues, and it's probably going to take it's going to take all the free show. We'll talk about proroguing. We've got leadership as well to discuss. So this is a really big show. It's lots and lots of stuff happening. But I mean, I knew this was coming, right? This is day 2 of Trump's presidency, so things are going to change. This is all expected, right? All of this stuff is expected, and there's lots to tell you about. So let's get going. First, we're starting in the United States, and Andy No says 404 page not found for La Casa Blanca. The Spanish language website and X account for the White House has been deleted. No Spanish language. Thank you very much, says Donald Trump. So yesterday I showed you some of the sword dance. I have the full sword dance now. And Vance, the vice president, was in on the sword dance too. And I think that's important. And I've got one other, well, we'll go back in time first and I'll show you the 2017 sword dance. No Mike Pence involved in this one. So May 20th, 2017. I don't think they were playing the YMCA at this one. Trump's sword dance that I showed you yesterday is on the bottom there. But this is 2017 on the top. And he was in Saudi Arabia doing the sword dance, and this signifies war, right? And to me, if you're asking me what I think this is signifying, he went and did this purposely to signify he's changing things. He's bringing the war to the people who would watch this and get that message. Does that make sense? And I think that that's what he was doing as well with his vice president yesterday. And here's the longer sword dance. So Trump comes out holding his sword, and Vance comes out holding his sword. Oh man! And here we go. Here's the whole thing. It's a minute long. So he's displaying the sword to the crowd, right? So there we go. Vance does the YMCA and Trump says, okay, that's the end of the sword dance. We're done now. It's just interesting. He didn't cut the cake with the sword. I thought he was going to cut the cake with the sword. Like, I thought it was just kind of a funny off the cuff thing he was doing. And then I realized after my show yesterday, I watched the full dance and I was like, oh man, he's sending a message probably. And Greg and I were talking about it. And I was mentioning that the 2017 sword dance happened on foreign soil. And this sword dance happened domestically, right? Interesting stuff. I don't know what it all means exactly, but if you were to ask me, I think that it's a signal, and the people who the signal was for know that it was for them. Does that make sense? End Wokeness says the State Department issues a one flag policy. American flags can be flown, nothing else. No pride flags, no rainbow flags, no nothing. The American flag. That's it. Good flag policy. Jim says Trump's bold plan to crush the Mexican cartels. President Trump has declared war on the Mexican drug cartels, proposing to designate them as foreign terrorist organization, FTOs, and paving the way for direct action. Watch a stunning display of U.S. military hardware and tactics in a training mission. This is how it's done. Precision, power, and dominance. The world's strongest military is ready to dismantle the cartel's leadership and infrastructure. No hiding, no escape. With this bold plan, Trump is sending a clear message. The cartel's reign of terror ends here. One of the things that I kind of came to learn about Mexico was that the president didn't really have a whole lot of power. It was kind of regionally run by the cartels. So they couldn't lock down anything because the cartels were like, no, we're not doing that. Thanks very much. And so it's very interesting, all of the circumstances that have led up to Trump using military the apparatus of the United States of America, the state, to come in and fix Mexico's cartel problem. It's just interesting. It's just interesting to me. There's a lot of things that, you could look at that and be worried about this future of an NWO. Here is Davos. I don't have any footage of Trump Skyping into Davos, zooming in, whatever you want to call it, into Davos. And I just didn't see any. So if you've got it, send it my way. I haven't seen anything of him addressing Davos one way or the other. But these guys are talking about Trump, and this person, oh, you can't see, the person on the far left here, this person tries to cut the guy in the yellow suit off, the camel colored suit off, when he's talking about Trump, and it sounds like he's being really nice to Trump. He says, of course, this means he thinks he can get away with anything. But this woman tries to shut him down when he explains, Trump's like a rising phoenix. Here we go.
Trump has done something no person in the world has ever done before. A dead man, a dead politician, has risen. Somebody who, 4 years ago at Davos, he's buried, dead politically, known to me. He's now returned. This is the greatest comeback in political history of a politician. And then, therefore, he thinks he can do anything.
We need to also factor in not only who's won, which is Trump, but who's lost, which is to say us. And I guess I would throw into that the epitome of the us who is losing here is Europe. That the European Union and by and large its member states have misread the direction where events were going. The causes that it is interested in, climate, human rights, some others, as well as the methods of diplomacy that it prefers, are simply being gradually kind of marginalized as something new, not necessarily something better, but something new moves into the center.
When you take a peaceful nation and disrupt it by having an invasion, a full-blown invasion, yeah, people are going to stop navel-gazing and saying, maybe we're destroying the climate, because the TV's telling them that they're destroying the climate, and have different problems. The problems that have been created by these bad policies become front and center, and the fake problems that were used to justify these weird policies go off to the side because people, or become front and center because people want accountability for the lies they've been told, right? Climate change is a hoax. Full stop. Used to steal our tax dollars and justify spending that goes into a black hole, right? Money laundering, essentially. Our tax dollars shopped through different climate initiatives, which is bullshit, and no accountability, none whatsoever. And if you say, hold on, this seems like bullshit, you're labeled a denier, right? And it's genius, really. You've got to admire the beauty of the trap, right? However, it sucks that we're all in it, right? Like all in it, even if you know that climate change is a hoax, if you say climate change is a hoax, the leadership are behaving as if it's real. And you can't move them off that because all of the science, right? And they're hardwired to believe the science. The apparatus, the institution is the science. You see the trap we're in? It's crazy. Anyway, moving on. Chris Rufo says President Donald Trump has signed an executive order rescinding Lyndon Johnson's executive order 11246, which established affirmative action and banning all federal contractors and publicly funded universities from practicing race-based discrimination, including DEI. A massive shift. Wow. Why? Where are our politicians? Yesterday, Greg and I were talking on Speaking Moistly, and it was really good. And we were saying that Trump's apparent strength in these things is really making our politicians look terrible. Even the good ones. Terrible. They're so weak. They talk in lefty speak about these lefty issues, and they don't take it on full because they're afraid of what the Canadian people would say. And I think that people would be happy with no affirmative action. We're going to get back to merit-based. We're going to get back to the best person for the job, not the best fill in the blank for the job, not the best LGBT for the job, not the best First Nations for the job, just the best person for the job, period. That's it. I think it makes perfect sense to do that, right? But at the same time, these people are going to lose their minds because affirmative action is something that Canada has been enthusiastically increasing for years. The government spends money on an attack against Canadian citizens to subsidize foreigners' wages when they get to Canada. Why do they do that? Why does the government hate Canadians? I can't explain it. In contrast to the United States getting rid of affirmative action, Holly Doan is reporting Liberal government has launched a project to reduce the overwhelming number of older English-speaking men who receive Order of Canada medals, Canada's highest civilian honor. Great. I mean, I had a slim chance of getting an Order of Canada medal, but now my chances are even slimmer, right? Order of Canada medal, please. Oh, I've got the wrongest skin color and I don't speak the right language? Man. Jeepers creepers, right? Still Roaming says after being asked by Steve Ducey, when will the public find out about the drones? Trump turns to his chief of staff. Can we do that immediately? I thought that he was going to get a report immediately and give the report right away, but that didn't happen. He's like, yeah, immediately. And then I never heard about it after that for the rest of the night. So day 3, come on, man. Jeepers creepers, Donald Trump. I heard day 1. Anyway, here's Trump on drones.
But is it anything, these drones, is it anything that people need to be worried about?
No, I think it's terrible. I would like to find out what it is and tell the people.
And can you commit to some kind of...
In fact, I'd like to do that. Could we find out what that was, Susie? Okay? Yeah, why don't we find out immediately? I mean...
Trump realizes he's the president. Yeah, I'd like to find out too. I'd really like to find... Hold on a second. Can we do that right now, Susie? Also, get me the JFK files. I want to read them right now. Steven says, military trials upcoming. This woman, Catherine Herridge, is in Guantanamo Bay. And this guy, Steven. So Steven's watching me. He says, military trials upcoming. I think he's right. I think this is what this is signaling. Like, you, as a magician, you try and take people's eye and direct it where you want them to look, while simultaneously using your other hand to, set up your next trick or whatever. But you're using your laser pointer to draw their attention. Look here, this prison thing, this cage has lots of bars, and I'm going to shake the bars. So you look at the prison and you watch what the magician's doing, and you miss the girl in the dress doing something in the background that is the linchpin for the trick. You know what I'm saying? They draw your attention where they want your attention, and that's what's happening here. They want us to look here. Guantanamo Bay. Why? YMCA, right? Military tribunals. Goes back to Putin accusing Obama of doing bioweapons research on Ukraine, and they want to prosecute that, right? Or Donald Trump is sending Hillary Clinton to Gitmo. I don't think he said over and over again that he didn't think that going after the first lady of the country would be good optics. He said that over and over and over again. You can't be pardoned for crimes against humanity by being involved in biolabs. If the Bidens were involved in biolabs in Ukraine, because they were involved in Burisma, which is an oil and gas company in Ukraine. So, but if they were involved in biolabs too, then, I mean, a pardon means nothing, right? And internationally, a pardon in the United States, if they're doing an international military court, means nothing. So Gitmo, are they doing an international military court at Gitmo to get rid of the people that Putin and Trump have identified as deep state bad actors, and that's what they're going to do? I don't know, but it seems like there's something here about this woman being down in Gitmo. And it seems like Trump understands that he's the showman. He's if we're in a circus, he's the guy in the center directing the whole thing. He's the circus director. There's a name for that. I don't know. But he's directing the lights. He's bringing them up and he's turning them down, and he's making it so people are watching what he wants them to watch. That's what he's doing. And it's interesting. I'm going to have to look up what a circus director is. It's interesting to watch because our attention is being directed in a way that is, again, it's super interesting. Here's Trump talking about, there's 2 minutes, but we're just going to listen to the last minute. He talks about Canada. He talks about how Canada is letting all sorts of fentanyl come in. It's not about the USMCA. It's about the fentanyl. It's about protecting lives and so on and so forth. I'll start at where he's talking about having a deal with Chi, and he says that he had a deal with Chi to stop the ingredients to make fentanyl flowing into Mexico and Canada. And it failed because of the 2020 election. Here we go.
But I would have stopped it. I had a deal with him where he was going to give the maximum penalty, which in China is the death penalty for drug dealing. And he was all set. He was going to give the maximum penalty to fentanyl dealers. If they send to the United States, they were going to get the death penalty. And of course, Biden didn't pick that up. I had that deal all done. It was all wrapped up. We were going to have it done. And then the election went, let's put it nicely, didn't go the proper way. I'm trying to be nice about it. It was rigged. And we had an incompetent president elected, and he never followed up on that deal. But he should have followed up, because if they got the death penalty, they wouldn't be sending fentanyl to Mexico, Canada, and other places.
Mr. President, how much will the
We're
tariffs
thinking about that too. We're talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada.
How soon on those tariffs?
Probably February 1st is the date we're looking at. For Mexico and China, we're talking about approximately 25%.
Date on the Gaza ceasefire, and are you planning?
So there you go. It's about the fentanyl. It's about the fentanyl. I thought this was the clip that was encapsulated in there. This is the one that he's talking about. It's about the fentanyl. The person says, "Are you doing this 25% tariff in order to push renegotiation on the USMCA? Is that your real goal here?" And he says, "No, it's not." Here we go.
To impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico in an effort to force negotiations sooner on USMCA?
No, it's really not on USMCA. It has nothing to do with that. They've allowed both of them, Canada very much so. They've allowed millions and millions of people to come into our country that shouldn't be here. They could have stopped them, and they didn't. And they've killed 300,000 people last year, my opinion, have been destroyed by drugs, by fentanyl. The fentanyl coming through Canada is massive. The fentanyl coming through Mexico is massive. And people are getting killed, and families are being destroyed. I mean, the son gets killed, and the family is a basket case for the rest of their lives. I mean, I've seen mothers that thought they'd heal. They never heal. They say it gets worse with time. It gets worse with time. They lose their boy. They lose their baby. They lose their young daughter to fentanyl poisoning. And I had that talk with President Xi the other day, too, of China. I said, we don't want that crap in our country. We got to stop it. I would have stopped it. I had to deal with.
It was the beginning of the clip that I showed. Oh, well. Regardless, he was going to stop the fentanyl, right? And the reason is the fentanyl. Here's Andy Lee. She says, things you should know. Oh, she's responding to Ben. Ben says, what's the downside to a massive effort to attack fentanyl production in Canada? Worst case, we have less fentanyl and a trade war that was coming regardless. Best case, we avoid a trade war and we have less fentanyl. Can we at least try before lighting the economy on fire? Andy Lee says, things you should know. The RCMP maintained a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese government's Ministry of Public Security, MPS, which was in effect until 2021. The partnership resulted in MPS officials stonewalling investigators while precursor chemicals flooded Canada. And so the RCMP should probably be disbanded. Like, we should probably investigate them for the same thing that we need to investigate the Liberals and all of the sitting members of Parliament for, and probably all MPPs, MLAs, and everybody else at every single level. Because holy cow, the corruption and foreign interference infestation we have is massive. It's just unbelievable, I think, at this point in time. Justin Trudeau says our cabinet just wrapped a day of meetings focused on one thing: protecting Canadians from harmful U.S. tariffs. Canada and the United States have a partnership that works for both sides of the border, and will do everything it takes to keep it that way. Donald Trump has just explained and outlined that Canada sells and brings in far too much fentanyl. So he's saying this partnership doesn't work for me anymore because of all the drugs. Not because of China, not because of other things that are outside of Canada's control, but because the drugs and the fentanyl and the illegals coming across the border. That's the problem. And I don't know how much more clear Donald Trump can be, but Justin Trudeau is absolutely not listening, and he doesn't want to listen. He's not interested in listening. He is interested in a trade war, basically. Keith says, and there you have it, the failed Liberals begin their next divide. Canadians play nothing about fixing the border. So they're not interested at all about fixing the border. Here's Trudeau talking about what happens if Donald Trump brings in the tariffs. Here we go.
Energy, more of everything to run the U.S. economy full steam ahead. Canada has all those resources. And we stand at the ready to work with the United States to create a booming and secure North American economy. Of course, if the President does choose to proceed with tariffs on Canada, Canada will respond. And everything is on the table. We are prepared for every possible scenario. In fact, just last night, I spoke to Premier Ford in his capacity as chair of the Council of the Federation, and he reiterated his unwavering commitment on behalf of Canadian premiers to working all together. This is an important and challenging moment for Canada and for Canadians, and we know there will be many such moments. Through all of it, I want to be clear that we have Canadians' backs.
So it's interesting that Justin Trudeau thinks that he can ignore what Donald Trump is asking for and have retaliatory tariffs and win. Like, we can't win a trade war. The other thing that I wanted to highlight here is he says Doug Ford is
Donald Trump
reiterating that all the premiers are on board. The premiers are not on board. Here's Danielle Smith, not on board with what they're doing, and calling out Doug Ford personally for saying for saying that Alberta should lead the way on this and take a hit and not sell its goods to the United States. And Danielle Smith's like, WTF, man.
You know, we spoke to Dominic LeBlanc this morning, and we were talking about the First Minister's meeting, and he said, we got a grade of 12 out of 13, which is like an A+ grade, but it's not perfect. Presumably Alberta was the grade that they didn't quite get. And then you have Premier Ford saying that it left him with the impression that maybe you weren't putting Canada first, you're putting Alberta first. What do you say to that?
Well, I can tell you I would never go out publicly and say we should stop selling car parts as a way of making a point to the Americans and hurt Ontario. I'd never go out and say we should stop selling aluminum to Americans as a way to make a point to hurt Quebec. And it hurt me that they felt that they could make that same argument, that Alberta should sacrifice our interests in order to try to advance some kind of trade war. I take a different approach. Let's stop fighting with each other. Let's maybe try to remove some of the internal trade barriers. Maybe my fellow premiers can stop blocking pipelines when we propose them to either the West or East Coast. And maybe this should be a moment of reckoning for us as a country. That part of the reason all of us look north-south is because for the years have made it very difficult to do business east-west. So maybe that's what we should be talking about, is each other, so collectively we can sell our products to the world, whether that's to America or whether it's off the West Coast or whether it's off the East Coast. And maybe that's a far more constructive conversation to have than how do you sacrifice one province's interests in order to be able to protect the rest. And fortunately, we don't have to have that conversation today because we don't have tariffs and we have the ability to have both of those conversations, a constructive conversation with each other and then a constructive conversation with our American friends.
So for sure that
So there you go. Very interesting. And here's Danielle Smith again talking. She's talking, I don't know who she's talking with here, but she's talking about Trudeau destroying the relationship between Donald Trump and, the United States and Canada. Here we go.
Let's be super clear about why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in today. It lands 100% at the feet of Justin Trudeau, who even just a few weeks ago gave a speech where he thought it was an affront to women that Kamala Harris didn't win. We're in a trade negotiation with a brand new administration, and we have a prime minister who keeps on poking his finger in the eye of the current administration and has damaged that relationship. So if there's a failure, it lands at his feet, which is why I'm counting down the days to when he's gone and we can have a reset. It's 47 days to go, and I hope he doesn't continue torching the relationship in the meantime. All I can do is try to repair and build relationships that should have been repaired and built over the last 4 years. That is what we do by having our office in Washington. We have good relationships with people on both sides of the aisle because that is what diplomacy is. You have to be able to work with both Democrats and Republicans, and you have to refrain from expressing a preference for who you would like in the White House. And so if there's a failure of leadership and if there's a damage to the relationship, it's 100% at the feet of Justin Trudeau.
I don't disagree. That was from yesterday, the 21st. Today's the 22nd. So Jordan says, speaking at the Empire at an Empire Club of Canada event in Toronto today on the recent U.S. tariff threats, Canada's former chief trade negotiator Steve V says Alberta going its own way in recent weeks has significantly undermined Canada's position. So Trudeau is saying Team Canada approach, Doug Ford says so, and he's the leader of all the premiers, and bingo bango bongo, we got things sorted, and we're Team Canada approach. And Danielle Smith says failure of leadership is Justin Trudeau's fault, and he's an idiot, and he is. Mark says, who authorized Arlene Dickinson to represent Canada? So Arlene steps out, and Mark continues, a resigned prime minister ruling unilaterally, hiding from accountability while letting unelected voices speak for our nation. So this woman, Arlene Dickinson, is asked about Kevin O'Leary negotiating with Trump. And I didn't vote for this woman. Here we go.
Hi, Arlene. I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on Kevin O'Leary and his advocacy for Canada? I don't know, at Mar-a-Lago. What do you make of him on Fox News and at Mar-a-Lago and mingling with the incoming Trump administration? Do you think it's helpful?
I don't know that it's helpful. I don't believe it is. I mean, Kevin O'Leary isn't authorized to speak on behalf of Canadians, and I frankly don't believe he is speaking on behalf of Canadians with what he's saying. I mean, if he was negotiating on our side, I think that would be, totally fine, but he's not. He's negotiating against us, so I don't think it's a helpful solution right now.
Right. So who is Arlene Dickinson, and why is she speaking on behalf of anybody? She's another dragon, and she was born in South Africa? Weird, right? Arlene Dickinson, here's the Wikipedia page, is a South African Canadian businesswoman, investor, author, and television personality. She was on Dragon's Den. So they went and got their own dragon to counter Kevin O'Leary. Weak, super duper weak. Trump is his own wrecking ball, and these people try and steal other people's clout because Trudeau and his cabinet haven't done anything other than destroy the place. So they can't lean on their wins because they have none. Pierre Poilievre says, we have an emergency, reopen Parliament now to take back control and put Canada first. This is why, Pierre Poilievre is the same as Justin Trudeau. I'm sorry, but he just is. Here we go. Canada is facing a critical challenge, says Poilievre. On February 1st, we were facing the risk of unjustified 25% tariffs by our largest trading partner that would have damaging consequences across our country. Our American counterparts say they want to stop the illegal flow of drugs and other criminal activity at our border. The Liberal government admits their weak border is a problem. This is why they announced a multi-billion-dollar border plan, a plan they cannot fund because they shut down Parliament, preventing MPs and senators from authorizing the funds. We also need retaliatory tariffs, something that requires urgent parliamentary consideration. Yet the Liberals have shut Parliament in the middle of this crisis. Canada has never been so weak, and things have never been so out of control. Liberals are putting themselves and their leadership politics ahead of the country. Freeland and Carney are fighting for power rather than fighting for Canada. Common sense conservatives are calling for Trudeau to reopen Parliament now to pass new border controls, agree on trade retaliation, and prepare a plan to rescue Canada's weak economy. The Prime Minister has the power to ask the Governor-General to cut short prorogation and get our Parliament working. Open Parliament, take back control, put Canada first. Why would we? So he would reopen Parliament, and then the first things they would pass is not a confidence vote, but we'd figure out retaliatory tariffs and border controls. I mean, I'm all for border controls, but why don't we get rid of the traitors in our leadership? And Pierre Poilievre, retaliatory tariffs? I mean, I knew that it was a uniparty. I knew that. But I'm still disappointed. Anyway, Laurie says Canadians overwhelmingly, well, hold on, I want to couch this. It's a lie. Global News is lying using statistics. But Laurie Goldstein doesn't question this. He says Canadians overwhelmingly support retaliation to Trump's tariffs, 82% in favor. Nope. If U.S. President introduced across-the-board 25% tariff on Canadian products on February 1st. So this is an Ipsos poll, and I clicked into the article. And do you know how many people they asked? 1,001 Canadians in an online poll. Online questions like that don't count as polls. They're not polls. They're not able to be... the information that polls collect is different than the information online questions like this collect. And so Ipsos has these banks of people where if you're Global News and you're like, hey, I'd like all these questions answered and I'd like it to break towards this way. They'll choose people who they think will give that result, right? And so they only have to do 1,000 people, right? Ipsos polled 1,001 Canadians from January 17th to 20th using an online survey. The composition of the survey, so the poll is not even a poll. A survey is multiple questions, and a poll is one question, okay? A survey is multiple questions. That's it. But a poll and a survey are different things. Anyway, the composition of the survey population was weighted to reflect Canada's demographic makeup. So the 1,000 people, 300 were over 65, 300 were between 40 and 65, 300 were between 20 and 40, and 300 were, that's too many. Weighted, don't worry, it's weighted. Super duper weighted. Bullshit. It's a bullshit poll for a bullshit headline, and it's bullshit, and they're lying to you. Gov.exe again says switching to French is catch up. So the plan for the tariffs and the trade war is catch up. That's what the plan is. Catch up. Yep, that's it. Gov.exe says switching to French is catch up from Heinz is a good way for people to avoid paying more in the Canada-US trade war, says Justin Trudeau. What an idiot. I'm not going to play him. I just can't stand him. Here's the food professor, and he's comparing to the 2016 trade war, where ketchup won us the day. And food professor says, in response to Trump's latest tariff threat, Prime Minister Trudeau proposes targeting American products that can be easily substituted, such as Heinz ketchup, in favor of alternatives like French's, produced in Leamington. The strategy draws inspiration from the well-known ketchup wars of 2016, one of the most successful food boycotts in Canadian history. I don't remember ketchup wars in 2016, so weird, right? It's not in my head. Eva says, just secure the border. Why is that so difficult to understand? It's not difficult to understand, but Justin Trudeau is trying to harm the country. That's what it is. John Fraser is responding to Pierre Poilievre asking to reopen Parliament. And he says, reopen Parliament, have a non-confidence vote, have an election now, country before party, Canada before Trudeau. And so we'll see. But I don't know. I'm not holding my breath. It seems like we're going to get a reopened Parliament and an accelerated trade war, maybe. We'll maybe have to wait till the 15th of February to find out what's going to happen. Holly Doan says Parliament cannot remain closed for 9 weeks while Canada is threatened with a trade war, says Pierre Poilievre. The Prime Minister has the power to ask the Governor-General to cut short prorogation and get our Parliament working. So that's the article based on the letter. And so there you go. John Rustad is responding to EB, and BC's finance minister says that retaliatory tariffs could target red states. So great. Super good. Let's piss off all the Republicans in the United States. It's not like they all have guns. John says, this proves my earlier point. This is John Rustad, leader of the opposition currently. This proves my earlier point. EB's NDP is focused on framing Trump as a political enemy because their pollsters and strategists tell them it will poll well. They care about playing partisan politics for their own gain, not about standing up for workers. That's why they're not trying to de-escalate and help British Columbians avoid tariffs, economic hardship, and chaos. Our province needs a BC-first strategy, but sadly, once again, we're getting an EB-first strategy. They just can't help themselves. Everything is about political opportunism and partisan politics for EB's NDP. They're obsessed with polls and playing pretend U.S. politics, presumably because they watch too many late-night TV shows. Minister Bailey, who is wearing U.S. Democrat Party merchandise during BC's election season, should not be planning retaliatory tariffs that are specifically designed to make Trump and the U.S. think BC's response is solely about impacting partisan politics in the United States. I want to be crystal clear on this. It's dangerous and irresponsible for EB's NDP to specifically tariff only Republican states who may not be at fault simply because the current U.S. president is Republican. This risks further politicizing the trade dispute and verges on cross-border political interference. The NDP minister needs to stop playing politics and putting BC workers at risk. We need to come to the table and de-escalate so we can save BC jobs. Right. I mean, Trump's not kidding. And if they enact the tariffs and start sourcing from other sources, they're not coming back either. So, merit, right? Kian says, if tariffs come on February 1st, it's 100% attributed to the Liberal clown show. I hear from American congressional staff that negotiations would likely get us out of this, but Canada's federal cabinet has been AWOL. They're sacrificing the country at their altar of power. Yeah, that's crazy. Laurie says, this is insanity. Canadian officials say matching a U.S. 25% counter tariff on some $600 billion worth of U.S. goods imported by Canada would result in $150 billion in duties collected on the backs of Canadian consumers. So we're taxing ourselves. We're harming ourselves through trying to hurt Trump. And it's a bad strategy. It's stupid. We shouldn't do it. Toronto Star says, in theory, Canada could match Donald Trump's tariffs. In reality, it would get messy. It's one thing to talk tough and say Canada should throw dollar for dollar counterpunch in response to Donald Trump's 25% tariff threat, but it's a whole other thing to land that blow. Yeah, and really, we should be using that energy to try and stop the fentanyl and the illegals. But of course, you're not allowed to say illegals in Canada because Justin Trudeau is a globalist traitor. Lion Advocacy said, if you're wondering why Trudeau and various cabinet members are throwing Canada under the bus with the U.S. tariffs, look at the NSICOP report, paragraph 164. The behaviors of unnamed MPs are deeply unethical and contrary to the oaths and affirmations parliamentarians take. The NSICOP committee reminds its colleagues that their duty as parliamentarians is to the people of Canada. The fact that MPs' colleagues need to be reminded of their oath to Canada is a good indication of why we are now facing these tariffs. Yes, they're behaving unethically, which, I mean, we know because we have seen them be held accountable by the ethics office. But again, the consequence for that is a $500 fine and a slap on the wrist. Like, that's it. So I'm not surprised by this. Deeply unethical, right? And they don't put Canadians first. Gov.exe says the Liberal government is paving the way to launch UBI under Mark Carney by saying they will compensate Canadians for losses as a result of a trade war. They're going to use this crisis to further their socialist agenda. They want to bankrupt Canada. This plays into their hand, and they can use this to foster more Trump hate and hand him the bag and say, oh, it's his fault Canada's struggling. It's not our fault. It's his fault. Bull poop. Here's Ross McKittrick, and this is a medium long thread, so I may not read it all, but I think it's worthwhile going through. And he says, everyone is focused on the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Accords and the tariff threats, but several other executive orders yesterday have even more radical impacts and will require Canada to rethink all of our energy and climate policies in response. They eliminate the EV mandate. Poof, Canada spent $50 billion in subsidies, and we'll talk about that later, to build unwanted products for a market that just vanished. Unbelievable stupidity on the part of Trudeau, Ford, and other moron leaders. Hits the jets on projected approvals. All agency heads shall undertake all available efforts to eliminate all delays with their respective permitting process, including through but not limited to the use of general permitting and permit by rule. There it is. Sorry. For any project an agency heads deems essential for the national's economy or national security, agencies shall use all possible authorities, including emergency authorities, to expedite the applications of federal permits. 180-degree opposite to what's happening in Canada. The biggest moves are yet to come. They ensure the global effects of a rule, regulation, or action shall, whenever evaluated, be reported separately from its domestic costs and benefits in order to promote sound regulatory decision-making and prioritize the interests of the American people. That wipes out the basis of using global climate change in U.S. rulemaking. They did that previously under Trump 1.0, but Biden reversed it. Directs agencies to safeguard the American people from people's freedom to choose from a variety of goods and appliances, including but not limited to light bulbs, dishwashers, washing machines, gas stoves, water heaters, toilets, and shower heads, and to promote market competition and innovation within the manufacturing and appliance industries. At last, a government that sees through the bad economics of so-called energy-efficient regulations. Once they start pulling on this thread, a lot of rules will fall apart and consumer prices will fall as a result. The Interagency Working Group on the Social Cost of Greenhouse Gases, which was established pursuant to Executive Order 13990, is hereby disbanded, and any guidance, instruction, recommendation, or document issued by the IWG is withdrawn. The IWG was relied not just by the Biden administration, but by Canada and other governments to justify greenhouse gas regulations. Gives the EPA 60 days to address the fact that social cost of carbon is marked by illogical deficiencies, a poor basis in empirical science, politicization, and the absence of a foundation in legislation. The EPA must assess repealing all its uses. Within 30 days, submit recommendations regarding the repeal of the 2009 EPA endangerment finding, which forms the legal basis for all EPA greenhouse gas regulation authority. If this happens, they zero out all climate regulations. Rescinds all Green New Deal type spending and forbids agencies from using climate change considerations in future decision making, but there's more yet. This declares an energy emergency and gives all agency heads emergency authorization to override regulatory limits on identification, leasing, sitting production, transportation, refining, and generation of domestic energy resources, including but not limited to on federal lands. Agencies shall identify and use all relevant lawful emergency and other authorities available to them to expedite the completion of all authorized and appropriated infrastructure, energy, environmental, and natural resources projects that are within the identified authority of each of the secretaries to perform or to advance. Not only withdraws them from the 2012 Paris Treaty, but from any agreement, pact, accord, or similar commitment made under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This means they are now out of all global climate agreements made since 1992. Also, they have pulled out of any and all international funding commitments made at the past COPs, since most of the recent COPs have been focused on financing handouts to third world countries. This means that all of them are now null and void. All agency heads directed to prioritize the development of Alaska's liquefied natural gas potential, including the sale and transportation of Alaska's LNG to other regions of the United States and allied nations within the Pacific region. Yet again, Canada's failure to develop LNG export capably leaves us behind. Taken together, these executive orders are remarkably detailed and fine-tuned to wipe out all forms of climate regulation and other barriers to U.S. hydrocarbon energy development, including coal. They not only prescribe energy actions, but simultaneously undercut the basis of future legal challenges. The U.S. is positioning itself for domestic energy boom. This could be a benefit to Canada if we deal with the fentanyl problem, border security, and defense spending, thereby heading off the tariff threat, and then emulate the U.S. actions and unleash our own energy sector. Our current federal and provincial governments may want to pretend this isn't happening, but it just did. We already have trouble attracting foreign investment, and competitiveness gap just opened up very wide. I have no confidence in any of the Liberal leadership contenders, especially Carney, are capable of dealing with the situation we now face. And I'm not sure that Poilievre's up to the task either, to be completely honest with you. CTV is reporting that Manitoba is trying. RCMP Black Hawk helicopters start patrolling Manitoba, U.S. You know, I might believe that they were trying if it wasn't RCMP, but at this point, I think the RCMP are probably as globalist as everybody else. Right, Brenda Lucky? Right? What happened with that shooting in Nova Scotia? Traitors. So yeah, I don't trust the RCMP. I don't trust Trump. Trusts the RCMP. When we bring people in from Gaza and we hand them $3,000 and close our eyes and pretend we don't know where they are, and then they cross into the United States and start doing terror attacks there, that's the reason we have the tariffs. Black Hawk helicopters from the RCMP aren't going to do anything while we're continuing those brutal, ridiculous, damaging policies. Simple. And Trump knows it. Trump knows it when we do that kind of stuff. Because I know it. And I'm just some schmo in my garage. And if I know it, he knows it. If I know it, he's actioned it. Okay? So, hello everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful